Hey there, welcome to episode 80 of the FFS Talk audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo, recording this at 12:49 p.m. to be precise, on Thursday, June 5, 2025. Today's topic, today's title, I have it down as AI Slop Tech. That may be confusing. It's not the technology of AI slop. It's when AI slop enters technology. So I'll leave it just because it's probably an eyebrow raiser. But either way, thanks for listening. If you're not familiar with the FFS Talk audio program, it is intended to be something of a dialogue or conversation. So far, we have about 80 monologues, audio essays about a variety of topics. Today's obviously AI slop appearing in tech. The FFS Talk audio program is essentially aimed at being a discussion about what works, what does not work, and what we might do about it. Constructive critique, not progressive politically, but progressive debate, that is, debating towards some sort of meaningful outcome. Hey, maybe we can actually change our opinions or thoughts or adapt what we think we know to what someone else has shared and morph our opinions, head towards solutions, etc. So we'll see if that ever comes to pass. I have yet to have a guest. To be honest, I haven't really been pushing too hard to get guests because I have a lot of things going on that could have guests, that really should have guests, and this one is not number one on the list, but it's not number million either. By the way, if you're not familiar with what FFS is an abbreviation for, you need to hang out with more Irish people, clearly. It's probably true either way. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a summary that I will read and the links for today's episodes. There are 4 of the usual shameless self-promotion links and 5 of the episode specific link types. And as it happens, I've selected Wikipedia links for all of them. Always a great place to begin a quest for additional information and knowledge. Rarely the best place to end such a journey. Your mileage may vary. So let's get started so we can get finished. The summary of today's episode: we can spot generated content. We know when it is probably fake. Already a typo. Probable fake? No, probably. We know when it's probably fake, maybe, right? What happens when AI is doing things you cannot see for yourself, doing things you may not understand yourself? Fingers crossed. The links for today's episode, as I mentioned, the 4 shameless self-promotion links. The first 2, and by the way, no obligation to spend any money at either of these platforms. You can if you want. Buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo is my free-form profile page with links to my various audio programs, different projects on which I am working, some affiliate links that point to some of my favorite coffee beans. There's some biographical information at the top, and a link, at least one, I think there's 2 actually, to buy me an update at buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo/posts. It is a weekly microcast, 5 minutes or less on Mondays, a brief rundown on the previous week's audio program episodes and any news and announcements upcoming. The next 2 links point to ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. hyphen is next to the 0 on most keyboards. Fi, does it spell coffee? Sure. Is it pronounced ko-fi? Sometimes by me, but to differentiate, ko-fi.com/DanHugo, and the Coffee Solo program, without a schedule and without a particular agenda or topic focus, available on ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo/posts. Again, no obligation to spend any money on either of these platforms. I've had these for quite some time, trying to up my game a bit and reach out to people more, engage my listening audience and maybe audiences of different types moving forward. Any proceeds that do arrive through either of these channels will indeed go towards coffee or coffee accessories. Coffee is what powers all of these efforts. Machine learning. Wikipedia link for machine learning. That's the old school AI. Machine learning is part of the general field of artificial intelligence research and technology development. Machine learning is I would argue, and I think it probably bears out in the Wikipedia article at least, and you can and should continue reading. Machine learning is like the math part, the gradient descent, the weights, the sigmoid curve, which is basically a clipping function, inputs and outputs, hidden layers, the construction of neural networks. That's what that is. So yeah, machine learning is all of the inner workings of artificial intelligence. It's the mechanical or the automated quote unquote learning process where some input yields some output, and then you say, that was close, let's try it again. And you adjust some switches and dials, and you do that in an automated fashion, and the machine is learning. There's tons and tons and tons to read if you want to pursue your own understanding of that topic. What is AI slop? There's a Wikipedia page for it. AI slop is when people just start generating content like crazy. So, hey, I wrote 25 books. Okay, AI wrote them for me. And then I had some AI voice engine read them and create audiobooks for me, and I publish them, and I'm making tons of money, and I don't even know what they say. Yeah, that's only one or maybe 1.5 examples. AI slop is going to become only worse, and only more of a problem, only more of an irritation. If you see an image and you find yourself saying, is that real? That's only going to become more common, and it will be more and more difficult to spot as the algorithms and the processes and the skill with how people describe what they want to create, as all these things become better, as what's his name? Philip DeFranco says in almost every episode where AI is a topic in his Philip DeFranco show, which has been around forever. AI today is the worst it's ever going to be into the future. It only gets better. So this will be, it'll be interesting times from here on out, as it has been. AI hallucination is a specific thing that we should all be aware of. And hey, there's a Wikipedia page for that. Sometimes the AI, large language models, however many parameters, however much is in their vector tables, all of the systems, the machine learning, and all of the supporting algorithms and technologies and data sets and all that. When it reaches some limitation or something else, I think there has been some advancement in the understanding of why hallucination takes place. It could be something as simple as when you hit the last word in the vector, but you still have more words to generate. Maybe you just go off on your own. No boundary checking, perhaps. Who knows? There's a research and theory being developed in these areas. End of the day, though, you got to hope that it's a hallucination and not some really, really, really bad advice or dangerous advice or an answer that sends you in the wrong direction in a dangerous way and so on. So yeah, AI hallucinations will continue. I've recently read articles, but everything changes so quickly. Not even going to bother going down this path too much. But I just recently read that hallucinations are not really going to be fixed. They may be mitigated. There may be fewer, or they may be reduced in like potential risk, but hallucination is just a fact of life in the way machine learning works to feed, quote unquote, feed the artificial intelligence process, the generative AI processes and so on. So could be interesting. Vibe coding is something that I'm keeping an eye on, only one eye. It's in my particular field. I'm a software engineer, have been for a couple decades now, maybe 3. So when I start seeing code generation, when I start seeing automatic application building, I'm not a coder, and yet I built an app. Those things are good. I mean, to be honest, these things have been around for a long time. They haven't been AI, but there have been application building tools. There have been visual coding tools that turn, code algorithms into moving blocks around and attaching them with arrows and, building a flow chart or similar. So these are not brand new. The notion that someone wants to accomplish something and they should be able to use the computer that they paid money for to do that, completely fine. I have no argument against that. And if artificial intelligence tools enable that as well, okay, that's good. We run into some trouble when those things are released into the wild. That is, hey, I wrote an app to do a thing. I'm going to put it in the App Store or on iTunes or wherever you get your apps for your phone or your computer. Do you know how it works? Nope, I'm not a programmer. So you'll never be completely entirely sure that it's not going to do something that you didn't intend it to do, and so on. I've talked about this in some program somewhere. I literally spoke to someone who developed a check-in application for an event, basically to capture some attendee demographics. And I said, "Oh, there's a problem when you enter an email address that might already have been entered, but you're trying to sign up instead." And I said, "So I think this is what happens." And he says, "I don't know. I didn't write the code. It's all a no-code app. I don't even know how it works." So this really happens. That's my one anecdote so far, but it's happening. It's happening. Robert C. Martin, Uncle Bob, has an example for why it's important to have people understand the code that they are writing and to test it. He said, "I'm sure there's at least one piece of software between your brake pedal and the brakes in your car. Wouldn't it be nice to know that it actually works and not probably works? It was written by AI. I don't know. Who knows?" So vibe coding is the newest trend where actual programmers have AI write their code for them, and then they can look at it and say, "Ooh, let's try that again." Finally, Arthur C. Clarke's 3 laws. These have been around for quite some time. Arthur C. Clarke no longer is, but his laws persist. He's got a few noteworthy quotes and references, which I'll read the quote. There are 3, but it's the 3rd quote that we'll read very shortly. It's in my first bullet item. So let's get on with the show. I will start by saying that AI is neat. It's cool. It's shiny. Neural nets have been around forever, but the compute capabilities to really make them go, not to mention the scope and grandeur of training materials made available during our connected digital age for the past 4 decades at least, where actual populations of people have been contributing words and ideas for the consumption of not only people, but now agents, I guess. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable. Thank you. I should get some water. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, says Arthur C. Clarke, rule number 3. That one gets a lot of attention. I mean, you've heard it before. If you don't remember, you've still heard it before. It comes up now and then. He actually said it or wrote it, unlike some of the internet tropes out there. So yeah, I don't know how it works. It might as well be magic, is essentially the take-home when it comes to AI and many other things. As is typical of shiny new things, the shiniest get a lot of attention, and so they get more effort put into them to make them shine even more, which basically means tremendous amounts of money, news coverage, hype, and competition to find out who will be number one. Normally the consumer benefits here when companies spend a lot of money to make better products. In this case with AI, the jury might still be out. Why? Because how are they making these advancements? Who knows? Shiny new things often improve quickly. History is replete with examples. Whether this is generally good is also told through history, because it is so difficult to measure changes in real time when it comes to this sort of thing. Yes, I can make cover art images with artificial intelligence to supplement my lack of graphic art skills. True story. But now I am impacting the creator but how I am creating, can I read? How am I impacting the creator population in the future with my one subversive act now and then in the future is difficult to measure individually. Aggregates and time will tell. I mean, clearly it doesn't feel great. It feels like something's wrong when actual creative people, and that probably includes the writers of code, but people who create visual illustration and other such things, their work has been used to train models, and then the models can generate work that looks very similar. Sometimes you can explicitly select the style of a particular artist. You've kind of left them out of the loop. The same could happen with coders. And in the moment, I'm solving a problem. In the aggregate and over time, we may find we've been wrong the whole way. So classification and generation and there's other stuff. One of the things that we always heard about and even learned about in any sort of technical pursuit a few decades ago, so I was in college 32 to 36 years ago, was neural nets used to classify data. Optical character recognition is one example that always came up. Later, photo classification. Is this a cat? Is this a hot dog? Classification is where, given some input data like a shape that we think might be a letter, attempt to determine what that letter probably is with some weights to the selections, to the possibilities, actually probabilities. If we have a hand-drawn lowercase letter A, for example, and the classifier is able to input that image data and says there's a 92% chance this is an A, a 5% chance it's an O, and a 3% chance it's a Q, like maybe it's an uppercase or uppercase O, uppercase Q, or lowercase a. We can probably go with it being an A with that distribution. And if we only get 33% for each of those three characters, or maybe we get some other characters, then we retrain, or maybe we say, oh no, we can supervise the learning and say, no, it was an A. And then the algorithm can adjust the weights inside the neural net and we can try again. Just that simple, really. Sort of. Generative AI is becoming more and more a part of every day, where we literally ask some platform with a unique name, probably the name of a person, but not always, a question, or we ask it to perform some task, like create a picture, create a video, read this article and summarize it. And through some magic behind the scenes, we receive some response that may be exactly, almost exactly, or absolutely not what we were hoping for. This is, of course, where a tremendous amount of effort is poured to make sure that more people like Claude versus Llama, Devin versus ChatGPT, or whatever. So you can run into a problem where we are teaching to the test, as they say. Like if one platform does better at writing in the style of Arthur C. Clarke, then the other platform, and if that gets attention, then the other platforms will train more on Arthur C. Clarke writings, and they'll try to become competitive in that area. So it'll be interesting to see what becomes important and what becomes a strength of any particular platform, if those all become competitive strengths and so on. So, well, still too early to tell. One might hopefully assume this: there is more going on under the hood, behind the scenes, behind the curtain, if you like. We all hear about large language models. Maybe you have heard about vector databases, huge parameter counts, and more all the time. Classification and generation are still in there. They're still obviously fundamental components. Add agentic AI, when AI, artificial intelligence agents, are now doing work for you. They're going out on the internet. It used to be called RAG, but now agents are the new coolness. So they'll go out and read your email and check the internet and who knows what else. And of course, MPC, that's the interface that allows those agents to do their thing. Instead of scraping your website, it can ask a website questions. It's getting a little weird, isn't it? Skynet. Everything is moving, but fast. But fast, as some might emphasize those words. So let's ponder the COBOL situation for a moment, which is actually relevant, which, as I will describe. If we can step back in time for a moment, if you will permit me to do so, all the way back to 1959, when the COBOL language came on the scene based on Flowmatic by the infamous Grace Hopper. You can find that information in the Wikipedia article. By the way, I have written a tiny amount of COBOL to familiarize myself with the language. It's not particularly difficult to get started. It's probably difficult to master, but many things are. The Common Business-Oriented Language, COBOL, Common, CO, Business, B, Oriented, O, Language, COBOL, was exactly that, business-oriented language. There were no desktop computers back then, so COBOL was really intended to run on large computers, larger computers even, back when taking up entire floors of small buildings was a possibility, and continuing even today, running mostly on what we sometimes call big iron or mainframe computers. Although you can run, given the advancements in desktop computing, even pocket computing, you can run COBOL on wherever you want. You can run some variation of a COBOL system on your desktop computer, laptop, etc. Pretty easily. But you probably won't use the data sets at the same scale. Data sets that would themselves fill up floors of buildings. Chances are you will never use a COBOL-based application, though, unless you write it yourself on your computer or your phone. You won't depend on COBOL in a hands-on way, but you rely on COBOL-based applications frequently, if not more often than that. Daily, every hour, who knows? Who knows? Depends on what you're doing. But certainly we hear COBOL enough so that it must be doing something useful, right? It is. There was a time when COBOL, Fortran, and even Lisp, which I believe stands for Lisp processing. I didn't look that one up. Fortran, formula translation, Lisp, I think was list processing, were the things to learn in the compute space. If you were into computers, you were learning COBOL, Fortran, Lisp, a few other things. Some of the languages that were even older, the Flowmatic, for example, that preceded COBOL. Today, you might replace these important tools, or as I've written here, import tools, which is wrong. Important tools with the likes of JavaScript, Rust, maybe Python, SQL, Java. But believe it or not, COBOL, Fortran, and Lisp are still around doing important things, even though the desire to learn these has waned substantially. There is still a need for them from time to time. Lisp is still around. Definitely, it hasn't really departed, and there are various languages based on it, and Scheme, Clojure, some others. Remember the various headlines from the pandemic timeframe, though, when COBOL-based systems were straining. Who are you going to call? An homage to the movie, yes. We have important, even critical systems relying on skill sets no longer emphasized or proactively taught, but which still require attention and maintenance. The systems, maybe the people with the skill sets, maybe even some continuing development from time to time. Same deal, both people and computers. COBOL gets them, more the computers, I think. COBOL gets the attention possibly because there is so large a gap between deployed critical systems and efforts to maintain a population of skilled and knowledgeable talent, if you will, to continue servicing these systems into the future. Fortran is still in use. I can't remember if it was a NASA project, but there have been ideas floating around about making Fortran optimal on modern hardware to take full advantage of the capabilities of our GPUs and our TPUs and our NPUs and all this, or language translation, which can be hit or miss, right? Let's change Fortran into Rust. Probably Fortran into Zig would make more sense. Anyway, the systems are still here. There's still a ton of Lisp and a ton of Fortran, but what makes the news more often is a ton of COBOL because people really are not learning COBOL. Like I said, Lisp is still around. Fortran probably is still in use enough so that it's not completely fading away, but COBOL is really one of those things. It's just not intended to run on the computers that we all have. Fortran and Lisp run fine. So the AI situation, comparatively, perhaps, what we are beginning to read about more and more, and the thing being talked about in various forums and discussions on YouTube's channels and whatnot, and with growing consternation, is that growing trend to see layoff numbers in the tech sector, among others, with an announced intent, whether implicit or explicit, to replace human workers with AI tools and processes. And now the latest thing is not to replace the person in the job, but to just get rid of the job. So now it's not a question of replacing people. It's about reducing the number of jobs so that AI can do multiple things without having a particular job that has been replaced. Maybe a semantic difference. We can also see various headlines and discussion about students using AI tools to do their homework for them. That's why I paid tuition when I went to college, so that I would learn nothing. And sometimes teachers and professors using AI tools to grade or otherwise assess these homework assignments. That's great. There's, I want to say it was Real Genius. The professor is giving a lecture. Students are filling up a lecture hall. Eventually, the students have tape recorders that just record the lecture. And then the final little revisited scene in the montage is the professor now has a reel-to-reel tape player playing the audio of the lecture, and the tape recorders are recording it. So the people are all gone. It seems relevant. In some cases, we are learning some of the details of these replacement actions with Meta, for example, Facebook's parent company, aiming, and they've said this explicitly, I think, and they being Mark Zuckerberg, aiming to replace their junior engineering staff with AI to write the code or perform other technical tasks, which would have otherwise been taken on, either way, grammar, some AI tool will fix that for me. These would be taken on by those junior engineers. So junior engineers out, AI to do those simple things in. One might wonder, where will the senior engineers come from in the future if the junior engineers are being sent away? Where will skilled talent come from in general if students and entry-level workers use artificial intelligence to do the work from which they should be learning and developing their job and even life skills, whether they choose to have this happen or if it's chosen for them? In other words, I might choose to have AI do my homework for me. And that's honestly not right. But if I'm in a workplace and I'm being replaced or supplemented by artificial intelligence, and I'm no longer working and contributing to the future of the company, my employer, that's being done to me. And I don't see either as a really great idea. What we may end up with, if we are not careful or maybe mindful, is a population that is less aware how systems around them on which they depend actually function. Most people never had any idea how COBOL worked or works today. You don't really need to. Mostly. But a small cadre of people who do is how we keep those important systems running. Today, we are developing a population that is not connected to the things on which we depend, except for those building the tools and systems that will make learning and understanding passé. When an app on one's phone can do the work or the thinking for us. So what about vibe coding? Vibe coding. I'm not a fan of the word vibe. It kind of reminds me of Smurfy. I think it's overused in too many ways that could be unclear. But anyway, get a sip of water here. You can read more about vibe coding. You will hear the term floating around more and more. I will say that vibe coding first came onto the scene. Started seeing that word maybe 2 months ago. And there was an O'Reilly book on vibe coding out within 30 days. Almost certainly written completely by a human. It continues the idea the notion that AI can build technologies for us. For the casual user, this is probably some application that we describe and which can then, it can be built for us. And then it seems to do what we want it to do. For programmers, the notion of vibe coding means letting AI tools write the code based on a descriptive prompt, maybe some sort of a notion of a specification, and then tuning the prompt and iterating on this process until the code, which a programmer would ideally be able to audit, and the resulting application or some functionality of that code is what the programmer is attempting to reach. Maybe the programmer is deciding, or maybe it's some collection of specifications, or maybe user stories and features. If you consider yourself reasonably capable of doing something, this notion of operation is similar, in my opinion, to having an apprentice or an intern to which you assign tasks, and then you take the time to guide this junior person towards some correct version of the desired outcome. A person in this role is learning and can build on that education over time. It's kind of the point of an apprenticeship or an intern program. An AI model is not necessarily learning in this sense, but is adjusting some parameters and recomputing the output vectors based on vast libraries of source code, in the case of coding automation, to arrive at something that may or may not be what is desired. And if it's close, then you're essentially supervising the execution of a particular model over a prompt, and hopefully getting the correct results, and then you adjust and iterate. If we remember that AI has inherent limitations based on its training materials and can sometimes hallucinate, as is the common term, how do we know the code is, as written, is doing what we want without also doing what we do not want? Maybe some security issues will creep in. There may be some lingering bugs not accounted for. The initial design prompt may not have been comprehensive enough, so that there are some edge cases, some corner cases, some gaps. Or maybe these weren't caught in an iteration cycle. Maybe the resulting code is what we sometimes call a ball of mud, where it works and it seems to do what we want, but it is so messy that we cannot really say why it does what it does, if it's close to what we want, which means we may not be able to actively seek out cases where it does not work. So that becomes a maintenance and ongoing support problem. So I'm concerned about vibe coding, and that's in fact why I am doing this episode today. But it applies to everything, because history is not going anywhere. The COBOL scenario is an easy one, but almost everything from the before times, which has been streamlined away. We don't need that anymore. We don't use that. Rotary phones. What is it? Bead and something. There's the way houses were wired in the 50s and before, maybe the 40s, was extremely different and is a concern for firefighters if they encounter an older home with an older style of electrical wiring. The list goes on. That's barely even coming close to the surface, much less scratching it. But all of these things they're still found in some corners, even though modernity has taken over. It hasn't eradicated history because history is still there. We often discover these things, these older things, whatever they are, suddenly when they stop working or make themselves known in other ways. If we really think about it, history is a great place to look for examples, not that will repeat, but which will inform. Some people say history repeats itself. Some people say history rhymes, but you can certainly find examples. My favorite example is the transition away from the classic standard transmission. Can you drive stick? Was the question in the old days. And by the way, yes, I can. While it is difficult to find a standard transmission in a new car today, essentially irrelevant with electric and hybrid vehicles, there are many older vehicles on the road today with a standard transmission. Would you know how to operate such a vehicle if you needed to, in case of emergency? That was always the reason, by the way. You should always learn just in case. You never know when you're going to have to rescue someone on the road. Guess what? Could happen. It might be you that you're rescuing. If we go back a few hundred or thousand years, would you know how to grow food in the ground? The list of things we should still know something about is lengthy. Typo there. Is lengthy, not it lengthy. And it's worth taking a look at. If you can find such a list of things, maybe make your own. Look around, see how many objects and services on which you depend are within your knowledge to explain and understand, if even a little bit. Where does milk come from? Maybe you don't want to know. How does my cell phone work? Why is it so expensive to manufacture in the United States? Like, these are questions you can see answered for you in the headlines and in talking pundits and whatnot. But the reasoning behind this might be worth knowing and understanding how things work when they don't. We could make another case based on the kerfuffle in which the world finds itself today regarding global change and the global economy. I think things are moving around lately. So the global economy is feeling that, and then we're all going to feel it. And how these impact the respective local and regional economies. Speaking of the global economy is sort of an abstraction, but how much are my eggs going to cost this time? Relying on the status quo is not unreasonable. I mean, that's the status quo after all. But forgetting or allowing to wither the abilities that enable alternatives to the status quo can be expensive. In other words, can I have my own chickens? Would I even know what to do if I had my own chickens to get those eggs? So you have to pay the difference. Sometimes it's worth it, sometimes not. Financially paying these, not being able to get away from the status quo if needed, can be expensive financially or in other ways, like food shortages, which we can either be ready for or which we will discover when we may not have been expecting to learn these things. So what comes next? What can we do about it part of the episode? I suppose we could ask your favorite chat client what we should do about all the chaos and the current state of the world and where it may be headed. But if we consider this a problem, that would be an acknowledgement that we have one such problem. First, perhaps consider why we are using an AI tool to save time, to fill in a personal skill gap, to find a search result summary that will free us from comparing different results for ourselves, which could itself be a question of time, or it could be a question of our desire to fully comprehend versus being told. So do we like doing analysis or having it done for us? Or to accomplish something we cannot do at all for ourselves? So a skills gap is something you could maybe learn to do, but if we tell AI to translate a document into another language, for example, that's maybe something we're just not going to learn. I'm not going to go learn another language to translate a few sentences, right? As a disclaimer, as I've mentioned, I use AI tools from various places to build up cover art images for various audio programs now and then, including this one. I tend to select photographs from stock photography and clip art and so on from libraries that are available that are licensed for such things. I generally don't steal art, generally. The AI tools have kind of changed that, so I can't say, specifically, but I do use art that is available for uses such as mine. So paid tools that have licensed clip art and other libraries of artwork and imagery and so on. I do not have the skills to make or edit my own variations. So if I need something I cannot find, I kind of make do, or I have AI generate it for me. So I'm guilty of that. There have already been, I don't have it write code for me though. I'm actually proactively against that. There have already been countless occasions where we could all be better off knowing the how and the where when it comes to foodstuffs, for example, storage of our personal data, use of and dependence upon technologies, reliance on medical information, therapies, treatments, and the list goes on. As AI is figuring into more and more of these things, all of these things in various ways, and more things we have yet to ponder, it is only becoming more important, sometimes critical, that we are aware of potential risks and consequences when the thinking behind our important things is done by an artificial intelligence that may or may not have any interest in we puny humans. Kind of the paperclip problem, which I will leave for you to research. Finally, consider dusting off those old skills and putting them to use now and then. As the saying goes, once you learn how to ride a bicycle, you never forget. Does that apply to your other skills, some of which you may almost certainly set aside or may have set aside long ago for the sake of your pocket technologies? Put a pen to paper now and then, compose your own emails, and consider responding to those from people you know or used to know. Yourself, don't let AI do it for you. Check an analog clock face from time to time. Haha. Read... I did not write haha, but that's just, when I say it out loud, it's funny. Time to time, read the articles beyond the headlines. Read them for yourself and compare and contrast multiple articles on the similar topic for yourself, whatever they may be. And don't rely on your mobile phone or some distant AI platform to do these things for you. You never know when you might need to know how to drive stick. So that's where we'll leave it today. As is always the case with every single episode that has been produced and published on this platform for this audio program. I shouldn't say this platform, your podcast or wherever you find them. The intent is to have conversation, discussion, maybe debate what works, what doesn't, what we might do about it. I'm sure other people have other opinions. We should focus on enjoying life and let the AI do the dreary, repetitive knowledge work. That works sometimes until you need to figure out what's going on. Why is the AI doing this? Who knows? We don't want to become idiocracy, do we? I don't know. But yes, at some point I will have guests, and they will join in the conversation with their views and opinions, and we'll have a conversation and see where it goes. Would you like to participate in something like that? Where have you been all my life? You can hear my voice is suffering from the latest in Nevada, Southern Nevada allergy season. It's been raining and humid lately, so that's kind of changing the game a little bit. Some days my voice is wonderful. Other days, like today, it's kind of fighting with me a little bit. I will endeavor to come to some sort of a steady state that works reliably, a work that continues, and I have no AI to ask for its opinion. So on that note, I'll thank you once again for listening, and we'll catch you next week. We will catch you next week. In the meantime, take care and try to do it. Don't have AI do it for you. Take care. Bye-bye.